ray of sunshine who is joining us this Wednesday morning. It's our dear friend, Amy Goodman. How are you, Amy?
Oh, I'm absolutely wonderful. I felt like it was hump day. Needed a little bit of yellow, a little burst of brightness.
Oh, and you're bringing it for sure. Love the yellow. In fact, it matches our background here. We've got beautiful yellow flowers to match your dress.
Well, we're so color coordinated. I love it.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's not waste any time and get to the hot topics of the day. And this is always a tricky one. Lending money to a friend. So someone recently wrote to a Dear Annie advice column saying that a close friend recently shared that she's in deep debt and her husband doesn't know. So she said she's feeling overwhelmed and asked for a few $100s to pay the minimum on her credit card.
Oh, so it turns out the woman is secretly in, get this, $17,000 worth of debt. Ooh. Clearly there are some issues here. But, in general, what are the rules about lending money? I mean, I remember what my mom always taught me, and she says, if you want to keep your friends, don't ever lend them money. I think Mom was right. What do you think, Amy?
Well, especially the underlyingness of this where she hasn't been open with her husband, that makes me feel very, very uncomfortable. So think of it this way. If you got the $500 and you hand it over, it's the equivalent of lighting at a fire. You will not get it back. And will it really put a dent? The debt will then be $16,500. So instead of offering the money and doing it kind of clandestinely behind the husband's back, why not offer other resources? Maybe you know a good financial planner. Maybe you know somebody who's really, really good with debt collection and can offer information. There's other resources that you can offer your friends in this situation other than the cold cash.
I could not agree more. I think that is such a spot-on answer and I think that can go for a lot of things. You know, when you are asked for money, maybe instead of giving them the cash, give them maybe a little bit of advice or some help in getting themselves out of debt.
Yeah, actually I had a friend when we were both in our 20s. I visited her after being out of town for some time, and we were getting together at her house, and she confided in me that she was having some problems with having gotten into some debt. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, I ran up my credit cards to the tune of something like $12,000. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how did you do this? She said, I don't know how it happened. But she did confide in her husband, Amy, and she said what happened was her husband, Paul, sat her down at the kitchen table, made her take out all of her credit cards, and he took the scissors out and he cut them in half, each one in front of her, which was really a graphic visual image, but I think it made the point that you will not be running up credit anymore. Everything you buy from now on, you will pay for in cash until that debt is paid off.
Yeah, that's a really, really smart, very dramatic, but very smart resource. And credit card debt is so common in this country, and there's a lot of shame that goes along with it. But in order to help each other, we really need to tie into the resources and do things like budgets and teach about financial planning and to help some of these people get out of these situations.
Absolutely. It can, that debt hangs with you over years. So try to tackle it right from the get-go. All right, so here's another dilemma. This one comes from the Dear Prudence advice column. So basically a couple is at odds about reporting their neighbor whose yard is, I don't know how to say this nicely, but it's piled up with dog waste.
Ew! Okay, so one spouse says to wait it out and see if anything improves, but the other is growing increasingly frustrated, obviously. It's always tricky having to confront people that you live next to. So how do you know when to take it to the next level? What would you do, Amy, if this was your experience and you had neighbors that just had dog
poo-poo
stuff all over the yard? What are your thoughts?
I want to add that this couple has a young toddler as well. So basically the baby's life has been smelling this odor seeping out through the yard. And they did a number of things right. They went over, made contact a couple of times, spaced out. They even offered to help clean up, which is probably more than I would offer to do. At that point, I think it's just time to call the county or call the city and make an official reporting. I think one of them was waiting to have the fellow move out. He claimed he was going to move out, but if he hasn't packed up that poop, well, it makes you think he's going to pack up some boxes to do the moving.
I know. That's true. What would you do in that case? Would you report them? I mean, how would you feel about reporting your neighbor?
I would. There is a thing about, toxic waste is really an issue. And if you think it's just on their side of the fence, it's probably already really seeped into your yard as well. And if you have a young child, this really actually is a health concern.
Well, we have a neighborhood where we don't have a homeowners association, so every neighbor kind of can do what they kind of want to do.
Yeah.
And there have been issues from a dog that barked incessantly to people that don't mow their yards to people that build monstrosities like, there was a mosquito pit, we called it, in the front yard. There was another home that burned to the ground with, we think it was an arson fire. And the rubble remained in that yard for 2 years before they finally, cleaned it up. So, in each of one of those occasions, we know that some neighbors have complained to the county authorities. And I guess, that's the way to get something done, right?
Yeah, and what I liked about this story in particular was that the people that lived next door to the man that had the dogs that wasn't cleaning up the poop, instead of going to the city or the county first, they respectfully walked over and said, hey, this is a problem. And I think that is always really important, to maybe try to see if you can connect with your neighbors before having to go to that next level of reporting them.
Yeah, but you can also do it anonymously. You can go to your county person and then say, I don't want to be named in this, and they'll come out and talk to the homeowner for you, and they won't say who it was who complained.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a nice way of doing that.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is also a tough one. In a recent interview with InStyle, Jennifer Aniston said that she's had to cut ties with some people in her life because they refuse to get vaccinated or will not disclose if they've been vaccinated.
So the Emmy winner has been an outspoken advocate for the vaccine and says it's really a shame that she's had to remove some people from her weekly routine now. So we're not getting too political here, of course, but in general, have you ever had to decide it's time to remove someone from your personal or your professional life? Amy?
I'd love to say that all my friends are picture perfect and it's kumbaya and we're sitting around in a circle just hugging each other all the time. But there have been times, in both personal and maybe professional as well, where you have to realize, maybe this friendship isn't serving me anymore, or I've reached out, and there's definitely a process to it, right? If you feel like you're not getting along with someone, you want to open that conversation. You want to either agree to disagree and continue on with your friendship, or maybe after a period of time, you decide it is time to cut ties, which always to me, I like for people to just get along. And I always think like everything is figure outable and solvable, but sometimes it just isn't. And I do like to think, just like a sweater that's no longer serving me, if I take that out of my life, something else new, it creates space and room for new things to flow in.
That's so well said. Amy, I just love all of your insight on things. Have you ever had to cut ties with, a friend kind of based on, maybe something similar?
Well, the whole Jennifer Aniston thing is, based on COVID, and that's a life or death situation. Yeah. I totally understand that. For me, personally, the only time I've remembered sort of removing people is when I got on a list to do charitable work. And I would sign up for one thing, but then you get on that list and then you end up being called over and over and over again for every charitable cause that comes up. And I love doing charitable work, but my time is limited, so I haven't had to kind of be ruthless about that. Yeah. How about you, Eileen?
I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head, but I think similar to what you were saying, Amy, sometimes friendships, I always think of friendships, relationships in your life, they all come for different reasons at different seasons. You know what I mean? And sometimes you just need to realize, okay, this person is no longer serving me. So, I think that's spot on.
And keeping positive energy people in your life, right?
Yeah.
That's what we love.
Yeah, and it's okay. It's okay. I'm actually not the same person I was 5 years ago, and I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. And if you're growing at different rates, it's okay. I would just say give a lot of grace, because sometimes there's things that are going on in people's lives that we don't even realize. So give it a lot of time to kind of filter it out and make sure that it's the right decision.
Well said.